Darkseid is characterized as this entity that exists beyond the physical realm, and all the dark sides that we see throughout the multiverse are like,
Or like pieces of them.
yeah, small parts of him, right?
Right.
In the dark multiverse, are there also dark sides down there? And if so, one of my YouTube friends wants to know, are they really nice? Because everything in the dark multiverse is backwards.
I literally just answered that question in issue 6. I swear. Like if you read issue 6 of Death Metal, Darkseid has gone down to the dark and has been granted a world. I'm spoiling everything, but has been like granted a world by which he won at the end of Final Crisis, and he's taken over the universe with anti-life down there in the Earth. And he explains he explains in some ways like his nature and his objective, given what the dark multiverse and the multiverse how they function. So yes, but villains and there's a speech in issue 4 that explains like why our villains version's good down there, and it has to do with Harley Quinn. And so there's a lot of we've thought a lot about a lot of the things that you're talking about here. So yes, and Darkseid, to me, it's interesting because I had to also I really try and pull together concepts that are not like super far flung from one another, but aren't like necessarily right next to each other. But part of the idea is that, Wonder Woman is the representative in Death Metal of all the positive forces, right? And if the positive forces, if everything, that she represents is truth and life, what is life if not being connected to one ongoing story that's ever changing, And all of the villains that have tried to enact crises, or that are the big bad guys of the DCU, Crisis often dictate self-importance for a moment. They say, now forget everything from the past. This is important right now. You know what I mean? And on top of that, a lot of the villains are trying to stop things from changing. Like Superboy Prime is very much about holding things back and keeping them classic, or the Anti-Monitor is essentially saying matter is constantly changing and evolving. I'm going to create nothing, so there's no chaos. And so Darkseid, to me, anti-life is the belief that you have to control or hold back change, hold back plurality of thought, all of that stuff to maintain order. And it's a fear of the chaos and the kind of destructive, wonderful, evolutionary drive of life, where Wonder Woman in the story is about letting that free and saying we're all part of one DCU that goes all the way back to, 80 plus years. Let's embrace that and reckon with all our sins, reckon with the past, and have all of us admit that every story we ever did existed and matters, and go forward with that. So there's a kind of defining of Darkseid that I think underscores what you're saying about what Grant said, where he's a concept. Anti-life to me is the concept of controlling the kind of multiplicity of life with one consciousness, and saying no one can go anywhere anymore. No one can make any decisions.
Does the Godhead Darkseid, the big giant version that all the things are pieces, does he appear in Death Metal at some point, or?
No, well, no. It's really just it's the dark side. It's Darkseid if he won Final Crisis. He's old in it. He's been there for years, so he's got these big horns out of his face and his long white hair. He's pretty cool. So it's more of like an old man Darkseid, because he was a baby in Metal 1. So subtly, I wanted to kind of nod at that and say he was a baby there. He's an old man here.
Perpetua created the multiverse, right?
Yes.
But there was a time there where after she was dethroned, the multiverse was essentially recreated. And some of, I think, Wally West's dialogue in Death Metal 1 points out how the presence is sort of this emanation of the source. They're both the same entity.
Yes.
I had this idea that the origin story for the multiverse from Lucifer, where the presence had created the multiverse, what if that was the origin after Perpetua? Like, after Perpetua was dethroned and the multiverse was recreated, what if that was when the events from early Lucifer happened?
Well, that's part of the idea, is to say that, she as a physical being that created it, that winds up diminishing all the mystery around it. So exactly like you're saying, she created kind of a singular self-feeding like predatory universe or multiverse, if you want to call it that, that she wanted to hide from her kind of beings, the hands. And then once they found out about it and they, restarted it in whatever way, whatever they used or whatever they called upon to restart it, to me, that's the presence.
Yeah, and it really reflects a lot of sort of Neoplatonic concepts that theoretically, if there was a being so far beyond us as God would be, then we wouldn't really comprehend it as a person. It would have to sort of emanate itself down to our level for us to even give a face to it.
Right. That happens actually. I'm spoiling stuff, but at the end of Death Metal, Wonder Woman meets one of the beings that sort of governs beings like Perpetua, and it has to take a physical form, and it says to her exactly what you're saying. Like I'm allowing you to see me, and I'm taking this form, but otherwise I'd be undetectable in different ways too.
So the idea is Perpetua is some super celestial thing from beyond creation, back in that big void that we saw Lucifer fly through at one point.
Right.
And and there's theoretically some other hierarchy of things out there too, like that raptor that showed up and pinned her down.
Yeah, right. That Hawk Girl was part of. The idea is supposed to be that because Perpetua has been locked in the source wall and she's been reduced, she's no longer sort of the kind of stature that she was when she was called upon to make the multiverse. So her whole kind of being and her nature is diminished in general from the kind of beings that she was supposed to belong to. Like if she did what she was supposed to, she was kind of a nascent thing. And if she did what she was supposed to, she was supposed to ascend. She dies with the death of the multiverse itself. Her body and her essence goes into it, like a parent to a child, giving your life to the thing after you and letting it live on. And then her soul or her essence or whatever it is at that level was supposed to kind of then ascend to be these other beings,
Yeah, so the idea is like there's some sort of an unseen council of things going further and further up until you reach the presence or the source, right?
Yeah, and you see at least the council at the end of Death Metal very briefly. You see some of it in the vaguest way.
I think people are gonna be excited about that.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I mean, I think the key to it, honestly, you're dealing with concepts when you're creating these kinds of weird cosmological hierarchies and stuff that are so easy to take apart or criticize or that or undermine. You sort of accept it and say like it's all imaginary in that way, like your channel. But if you believe in it emotionally and you believe in it spiritually by saying like it might be a different exact permutation than what I believe. I don't believe in Perpetua, but I believe in the idea that there are these different levels of perception and that once you get to a certain point, it's all a leap of faith about what you hope is there, how you hope things work in that way. And these things that we build, these architectures that we build for this whole kind of strange cosmos of the DCU are based in that. And when they're based in that, I feel like is the Kirby-esque ones where you just sort of you kind of almost just ask people to go with it or not, because it's emotionally, there's an emotional integrity to it, even if there's not a scientific integrity to it.